Many, many generations ago, over 3,500 years have passed since these events unfolded. Our ancestors, the children of Israel, had settled in Egypt. It was a time when the Great Pyramids already stood as ancient wonders, a testament to Egyptian power, long before our people even arrived. For hundreds of years, roughly from the 18th century BCE to the 13th century BCE, our families lived in the land of Goshen, a rich farming area within Egypt. They had come there during a terrible famine, invited by a powerful Egyptian official named Joseph, one of their own, who had become a trusted advisor to an earlier pharaoh. These were good times. Our people grew in number. They prospered, they built homes, they raised their children, and they kept their traditions alive, living somewhat apart but still welcomed guests in a foreign land. They were a blessing to Egypt, bringing their skills and their families, enriching the land. But as the seasons turned, and then the years, and then the centuries, the memory of Joseph and his good deeds faded. Roughly 400 years had passed since Joseph's time, when a new king, a new Pharaoh, came to power in Egypt. This Pharaoh knew nothing of Joseph. He didn't care about the past. All he saw was a large group of people who were different, who were growing strong, and who, in his mind, posed a threat to his kingdom. This new Pharaoh sat on his grand throne, looking out at his vast kingdom. He heard the reports from his officials, reports that spoke of how many children our people were having, how their families were expanding quickly. He saw their strong backs, their healthy children, and a cold fear began to grow in his heart. He gathered his wisest advisors, their faces serious under their elaborate headdresses. "Look," he told them, his voice low and full of worry. "These people, the children of Israel, they are becoming too many and too strong for us. If war comes, they might join our enemies and fight against us. They could leave our country, taking their strength with them. We must do something." His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken danger. The advisors nodded, their eyes reflecting the Pharaoh's own fear. They understood the power of a large, united group, especially one that kept its own ways, its own customs, even while living within Egypt's borders. Pharaoh wasn't just worried about their numbers, he was worried about their hearts, their loyalty. He saw them as other, not truly Egyptian, and therefore not truly to be trusted. This was the beginning of his cruel plan. He decided he needed to deal with our people in a shrewd way, a clever but hurtful way, to keep them from growing even more powerful. The first step was subtle, almost like a gentle tightening of a rope. It wasn't immediate slavery, not yet. It was a slow, creeping loss of freedom. Pharaoh commanded that our people should be put to work on public projects, building great storage cities for him, places called Pithom and Ramses. At first, it might have seemed like a normal task, a way to contribute to the land they lived in. But soon, the work became harder. The tasks grew heavier. Overseers, Egyptians with hard eyes and even harder whips, were placed over our families. These overseers were not kind. Their job was to make life difficult, to break spirits, to ensure that the work was never ending and always exhausting. Our people, who had always been free to farm their own lands, to work at their own pace, suddenly found themselves forced into labor. Imagine the shock, the confusion. One morning you are tending your fields, looking forward to a quiet evening with your family. The next, you are told to leave your home, to march to a construction site, to lift heavy bricks, to carry burdensome loads under the scorching sun. The freedom they had known for centuries was slowly being chipped away, piece by painful piece. Their days were no longer their own. Their strength was no longer for their own families, but for a king who feared them. This wasn't just about building cities. It was about crushing a spirit. Pharaoh believed that by making their lives bitter with hard labor, our people would become tired, sad, and unwilling to have more children. He thought if they were constantly struggling just to survive, they would lose their hope, their joy, their very desire to grow and flourish. This was the first terrible manipulation, using physical hardship to achieve psychological control. He wanted them to become so weary that they would no longer be a threat. The change in daily life was immense. The laughter in the villages of Goshen grew quieter. The songs sung in the evenings had a mournful tone. Fathers came home with aching backs and empty eyes, too tired to play with their children. Mothers worried constantly about the next day, about how they would feed their families with the meager provisions they were allowed, about the safety of their husbands and sons under the harsh overseers. The joy of a new birth, once a cause for celebration, now came with a pang of fear, a worry about the future of that precious new life in a land that was turning hostile. Pharaoh's strategy was insidious. He didn't declare war. He didn't immediately kill them. Instead, he slowly tightened the screws, making their lives miserable, hoping they would simply dwindle away or become too weak to ever challenge him. He wanted them to forget who they were, to forget their heritage, to become mere tools for his grand projects. He wanted to strip away their identity, their dignity, and their hope, all while telling himself he was simply protecting Egypt. But our people, though burdened, though suffering, were not so easily broken. They clung to their traditions, to their faith, to the stories of their ancestors, even as the shadow of Pharaoh's cruelty grew longer and darker over their lives. The fear was real, the pain was deep, but something inside them refused to give up, even then. They endured, watching, waiting, and praying, as their once welcoming home became a place of increasing sorrow and hardship. Pharaoh watched, and his anger grew. His cruel plan, meant to slow the growth of our people, was failing. Despite the backbreaking labor, despite the harsh conditions, despite the pain and exhaustion, the children of Israel continued to grow in number. They kept having families, kept raising their children, and even seemed to thrive in some ways, simply by clinging to each other and to their ancient faith. This resilience, this stubborn refusal to be broken, only fueled Pharaoh's fear and frustration. He had tried to manipulate them with hard work, hoping it would make them too weak to multiply, but it hadn't worked. In fact, the more he oppressed them, the more they seemed to spread and grow strong. This defiance, even unintentional, felt like a direct challenge to his power. So, Pharaoh decided to make their lives even more unbearable. He didn't just want to control them, he wanted to crush them. He ordered his taskmasters to intensify the work. No longer would it be merely difficult, it would be agonizing. The script says he made their lives bitter with hard service, in mortar and in brick, and in all manner of service in the field. All their service, wherein they made them serve, was with rigor. This means they were forced to do every kind of hard, soul-destroying labor, under the strictest and cruelest conditions. Imagine the dawn in Goshen now. It didn't bring the promise of a new day, but the dread of another endless cycle of suffering. Before the sun had fully risen, the sharp calls of the Egyptian overseers would echo through the villages. Men, women, and even older children, their bodies already aching from the previous day's toil, would be dragged from their meager sleep. They would march, a silent, tired procession, to the vast construction sites. These weren't just simple tasks. They were forced to dig clay from the earth, mix it with water and straw to make bricks. Then they had to carry these heavy, wet bricks to the drying grounds and later to the construction walls. Day after day, brick after brick, under the relentless Egyptian sun. The overseers were everywhere, their whips cracking in the air, their voices sharp with threats and insults. There was no mercy, no rest, no moment of peace. If a brick broke, if a load was too heavy and someone stumbled, if a worker paused for even a moment to wipe the sweat from their eyes, the whip would fall. The pain was physical, but the humiliation was perhaps even worse. Our people, once proud and free, were treated worse than animals, seen as mere tools to be used and discarded. Their bodies were covered in dust and mud, their hands calloused and bleeding, their shoulders raw from carrying heavy baskets of earth and mortar. The work in the fields was just as brutal. Under the watchful eyes of the Egyptians, they were forced to plant and harvest crops that would not feed their own families, but fill the storehouses of Pharaoh. They toiled from the first light of dawn until the stars appeared, their muscles screaming with protest. There was no end to the demands. No matter how much they produced, Pharaoh always wanted more. The goal was not efficiency, it was exhaustion. It was a calculated cruelty designed to break their will. This wasn't just physical labor, it was psychological warfare. Every single day, Pharaoh's message was clear. You are nothing. You are slaves. Your lives belong to me. He wanted to strip them of their identity, their heritage, their very humanity. He wanted them to forget they were the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, chosen by God. He wanted them to see themselves only as brickmakers, field workers, slaves. He believed that if he could break their spirit, their numbers would finally dwindle, and they would cease to be a threat. But something remarkable happened. Even as their bodies were broken, their spirit, though wounded, refused to die completely. In the quiet moments, in the stolen glances between family members, in the hushed prayers offered in the darkness of their miserable homes, a spark of hope remained. They remembered the stories of their ancestors, stories of a God who had made promises to them. They clung to the belief that they were more than just slaves. This inner strength, this deep-seated faith, was an invisible shield against Pharaoh's cruelest intentions. The Egyptians, watching their slaves continue to multiply despite the crushing workload, became even more exasperated. They abhorred the children of Israel, meaning they felt disgust and hatred for them. They couldn't understand how these people could endure so much and still grow. This failure of his physical oppression to achieve his goal only pushed Pharaoh to even more extreme and horrifying measures. He had tried to break their bodies and their spirits with work, but our people proved stronger than he had imagined. Their cries, though muffled by the dust and the whip, were beginning to reach higher, beyond the walls of Egypt, towards the heavens. The stage was set for Pharaoh's next, truly unspeakable act of manipulation and cruelty. He would not just attack their strength, but their very future. Pharaoh's heart grew harder with each passing day. His plans to crush our people through relentless labor had failed. Instead of dwindling, the children of Israel continued to increase, becoming even stronger. This stubborn resilience, this defiance of his will, enraged him. His fear transformed into a chilling, desperate cruelty. He realized that forced labor alone would not be enough. He needed a more direct, more devastating attack on our future. He decided to strike at the very source of our strength, our children. Pharaoh's heart grew harder with each passing day. His plans to crush our people through relentless labor had failed. Instead of dwindling, the children of Israel continued to increase, becoming even stronger. This stubborn resilience, this defiance of his will, enraged him. His fear transformed into a chilling, desperate cruelty. He realized that forced labor alone would not be enough. He needed a more direct, more devastating attack on our future. He decided to strike at the very source of our strength, our children. Pharaoh's heart grew harder with each passing day. His plans to crush our people through relentless labor had failed. Instead of dwindling, the children of Israel continued to increase, becoming even stronger. This stubborn resilience, this defiance of his will, enraged him. His fear transformed into a chilling, desperate cruelty. He realized that forced labor alone would not be enough. He needed a more direct, more devastating attack on our future. He decided to strike at the very source of our strength, our children. Pharaoh's heart grew harder with each passing day. His plans to crush our people through relentless labor had failed. Instead of dwindling, the children of Israel continued to increase, becoming even stronger. This stubborn resilience, this defiance of his will, enraged him. His fear transformed into a chilling, desperate cruelty. He realized that forced labor alone would not be enough. He needed a more direct, more devastating attack on our future. He decided to strike at the very source of our strength, our children. Pharaoh's heart grew harder with each passing day. His plans to crush our people through relentless labor had failed. Instead of dwindling, the children of Israel continued to increase, becoming even stronger. This stubborn resilience, this defiance of his will, enraged him. His fear transformed into a chilling, desperate cruelty. He realized that forced labor alone would not be enough. He needed a more direct, more devastating attack on our future. He decided to strike at the very source of our strength, our children. Pharaoh's heart grew harder with each passing day. His plans to crush our people through relentless labor had failed. Instead of dwindling, the children of Israel continued to increase, becoming even stronger. This stubborn resilience, this defiance of his will, enraged him. His fear transformed into a chilling, desperate cruelty. He realized that forced labor alone would not be enough. He needed a more direct, more devastating attack on our future. He decided to strike at the very source of our strength, our children. Pharaoh's heart grew harder with each passing day. His plans to crush our people through relentless labor had failed. Instead of dwindling, the children of Israel continued to increase, becoming even stronger. This stubborn resilience, this defiance of his will, enraged him. His fear transformed into a chilling, desperate cruelty. He realized that forced labor alone would not be enough. He needed a more direct, more devastating attack on our future. He decided to strike at the very source of our strength, our children. Pharaoh's heart grew harder with each passing day. His plans to crush our people through relentless labor had failed. Instead of dwindling, the children of Israel continued to increase, becoming even stronger. This stubborn resilience, this defiance of his will, enraged him. His fear transformed into a chilling, desperate cruelty. He realized that forced labor alone would not be enough. He needed a more direct, more devastating attack on our future. He decided to strike at the very source of our strength, our children. Pharaoh's heart grew harder with each passing day. His plans to crush our people through relentless labor had failed. Instead of dwindling, the children of Israel continued to increase, becoming even stronger. This stubborn resilience, this defiance of his will, enraged him. His fear transformed into a chilling, desperate cruelty. When they went to the homes of the Hebrew women, when they saw a healthy baby boy come into the world, their hearts swelled with love and protection, not with the Pharaoh's murderous intent. They allowed every baby boy to live, carefully concealing their defiance. After some time, Pharaoh, perhaps noticing that the Israelite population was still thriving, called for the midwives again. His eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Why have you done this?" he demanded, his voice laced with menace. "Why have you let the boys live?" The midwives, with quick thinking and deep faith, found a clever way to answer. They knew they couldn't simply say they disobeyed him. That would mean certain death. So they explained, The Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women. They are strong and vigorous. Before we even arrive, they have already given birth. This was a brilliant lie, rooted in a half-truth about the resilience of our people. The Hebrew women indeed often had quick, natural births, unlike some of the more drawn-out labors that might have been common in Egyptian society, where midwives were often present for longer periods. Pharaoh, perhaps unfamiliar with the specific birthing customs of the Hebrews, or perhaps just annoyed by their resourcefulness, had to accept their explanation. He couldn't prove they were lying without directly witnessing every birth, which was impossible. Because the midwives feared God and chose to save lives, God showed them great kindness. He blessed them, making their own families prosper. Their courageous act of defiance, choosing righteousness over the Pharaoh's evil, was a beacon of hope in a time of deep darkness. But Pharaoh's frustration only intensified. His attempt to manipulate the midwives had failed. He would not be thwarted. His cruelty knew no bounds. He decided to remove the middleman, to make his horrific decree public and universal. He issued a new, terrifying command, not just to the midwives, but to all his people, to every Egyptian citizen. Every son who is born to the Hebrews, he declared to his entire kingdom, you must throw into the Nile River, but every daughter you may save alive. This was a turning point. The manipulation had escalated from forced labor and secret orders to an open, brutal command for murder. Now every Egyptian, from the grandest noble to the humblest peasant, was ordered to be an executioner. The beautiful, life-giving Nile, the very river that sustained Egypt, was now to become a watery grave for innocent children. Imagine the terror that swept through the Israelite communities. Every pregnant woman lived in dread. Every new mother held her baby in secret, listening for sounds, fearing every knock at the door. Fathers watched their sons with desperate eyes, knowing that any Egyptian passing by could seize their child and cast him into the river. The joy of birth was replaced by anguish, the fear of discovery, the desperate struggle to hide. Families were shattered by this decree, living under a constant shadow of death. Pharaoh's manipulation had reached its most monstrous peak, a direct assault on the very existence of our people. Yet even in this darkest hour, hope would find a way, bubbling up from the most unexpected places, like a small, fragile reed in the mighty Nile. The shadow of Pharaoh's terrible decree lay heavy over every Israelite home. Every son who was born to the Hebrews, you must throw into the Nile River. These words were a constant, chilling whisper in the wind, a source of endless fear and sorrow. Families tried to hide their newborn boys, but the task was almost impossible. How long could a baby's cries be muffled? How long could a secret be kept in a land teeming with watchful eyes? The river, once a symbol of life, had become a terrifying enemy. It was into this world of despair and danger that a special baby boy was born to a Levite couple, Amram and Jochebed, two of our ancestors. His mother saw that he was a beautiful child, and her heart swelled with a fierce, protective love. She knew she couldn't simply give him up to the river. Defying Pharaoh's command, she managed to hide him for 3 months. Imagine her daily struggle, the fear every time someone knocked at the door, the constant effort to keep him quiet, the desperate prayers whispered over his sleeping form. Every day was a risk, every moment a test of courage. But as the baby grew, it became harder and harder to conceal him. His cries became stronger, his movements more active. Jochebed knew she couldn't keep him hidden in the house forever. She had to do something drastic, something that, paradoxically, involved putting him near the very river that was meant to be his grave. Her plan was born out of both desperation and a deep, unwavering faith. She took a small basket made of papyrus reeds, the same material that grew by the riverbank. With careful hands, she coated it with tar and pitch, making it waterproof. Inside, she gently placed her precious baby boy. This little ark, this tiny boat of hope, was then carried to the edge of the Nile. Among the tall reeds that grew along the bank, she carefully placed the basket, hoping it would be hidden from view, hoping it would float safely. It was an act of incredible bravery, a mother's desperate gamble against a tyrannical king. She was entrusting her child to the currents of the river and to the protection of a higher power, praying that fate or God would intervene. Her older daughter, Miriam, a watchful and courageous young girl, stood at a distance. She was hidden among the reeds, her heart pounding with fear and anticipation, determined to see what would happen to her baby brother. She watched as the little basket bobbed gently on the water, moving slowly with the current, a tiny speck of vulnerability in a vast, dangerous world. And then, a moment that could only be divine intervention. Pharaoh's own daughter, a princess of Egypt, came down to the river to bathe. Her attendants walked along the bank. As she looked into the reeds, her eyes caught sight of the basket. Curious, she sent one of her slave girls to fetch it. When the servant brought the basket to her, the princess opened it. Inside, she saw the baby boy crying. Her heart, surprisingly, was filled with pity. She immediately recognized him as one of the Hebrew children, despite her father's cruel decree. Perhaps it was his innocence, perhaps his beauty, or perhaps a touch of compassion from a place she didn't fully understand. Instead of obeying her father's law, she chose to save him. At this crucial moment, Miriam, who had been watching with bated breath, stepped out from the reeds. With remarkable presence of mind, the young girl approached the princess. "Shall I go and call a Hebrew woman to nurse the baby for you?" she asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The princess, perhaps appreciating the quick solution, agreed. "Go," she said. Miriam ran, her feet flying, straight back to her mother. Imagine Jochebed's shock, her disbelief, her overwhelming relief when Miriam told her what had happened. She was to nurse her own child, not knowing he was her own, for the very daughter of the Pharaoh who sought to destroy him. It was a twist of fate so profound, so unexpected, it could only be a miracle. So Jochebed brought her own baby, now named Moses, a name given by Pharaoh's daughter, meaning drawn out of the water, back to the palace. She nursed him, cared for him, and nurtured him during his most tender years. She had the extraordinary, secret joy of raising her own son, all while being paid by Pharaoh's daughter. During these precious years, she undoubtedly instilled in him the stories of their ancestors, the faith of their people, the truth of his heritage. She knew he was destined for more than simply being an Egyptian prince. When Moses grew older, perhaps no longer needing his mother's milk and the constant care of a wet nurse, Jochebed brought him back to Pharaoh's daughter. From that day on, Moses was raised as the princess's own son. He grew up in the opulent palace of Pharaoh, surrounded by luxury, educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians. He learned their language, their customs, their history, their military strategies. He was, to all outward appearances, an Egyptian prince, a part of the very system that enslaved his true family. The irony was staggering. Pharaoh, in his desperate attempt to cruelly manipulate and eliminate our people, had unknowingly brought the one who would challenge him directly into his own home. He had raised the very man who would one day confront him and demand the freedom of the Israelites. His plan to destroy our future had instead given rise to its greatest champion, hidden in plain sight, protected by the very hands that should have enforced his decree. Moses, the Hebrew child saved from the Nile, was now poised to become a pivotal figure in the destiny of our people, a living testament to the failure of Pharaoh's cruelest manipulation. Moses grew up in the grand palace of Pharaoh, learning all the ways of the Egyptians. He had everything a prince could desire: fine clothes, rich food, the best teachers, and a position of power. But deep inside, he knew he was different. He knew his true heritage, thanks to his mother's early teachings, and perhaps the stories whispered to him by the Hebrew servants in the palace. As he grew into a man, he couldn't ignore the suffering of his people, the Israelites, who toiled under the brutal hand of the Egyptians. He would often go out to where his kinsmen were, observing their hardship, feeling a kinship with them that transcended his royal upbringing. One day, while visiting the work sites, Moses witnessed a truly horrifying sight. An Egyptian taskmaster, a cruel and heartless man, was violently beating a Hebrew slave, one of our own people. The injustice, the brutality, the sheer unfairness of it all ignited a fierce rage in Moses' heart. He looked around, making sure no one was watching. In a moment of uncontrolled anger and a desperate desire to protect his kin, Moses struck the Egyptian and killed him. He then buried the body in the sand, hoping to cover his tracks and conceal his desperate act. The next day, Moses went out again, perhaps burdened by what he had done, perhaps still wrestling with his conscience. He saw two Hebrew men fighting amongst themselves. Moses, trying to be a peacemaker, asked the one who was in the wrong, "Why are you hitting your fellow Hebrew?" But the man, defiant and scornful, retorted, "Who made you a ruler and a judge over us? Are you planning to kill me just as you killed the Egyptian yesterday?" These words hit Moses like a thunderbolt. His secret was out. Someone had seen him, and the word had spread among our people. The very people he tried to defend now knew his secret, and he realized they might betray him. His heart sank. If his own people knew, it wouldn't be long before Pharaoh found out. Indeed, it wasn't long. When Pharaoh heard what Moses had done, his anger was boundless. This was the man he had raised as his own, defying his laws, killing one of his officials. Pharaoh immediately sought to kill Moses. The palace, once Moses' home and sanctuary, was now a dangerous trap. Moses knew he had to flee, to escape the wrath of the most powerful man in the world. He left everything behind, his life as a prince, his comforts, his adopted family, and embarked on a journey into the unknown. Moses fled far away to the land of Midian, a desert region to the east of Egypt. Here he was no longer a prince, no longer a man of privilege. He was a refugee, a fugitive, a wanderer. He sat by a well, reflecting on his changed life. It was there he met the daughters of Reuel, a priest of Midian, who had come to water their father's flock. Moses, with his innate sense of justice, helped them when other shepherds tried to drive them away. Reuel, also known as Jethro, welcomed Moses into his home. There, Moses married Reuel's daughter, Zipporah, and together they had 2 sons. For many years, Moses lived a quiet life as a shepherd. Decades passed. He learned the ways of the desert, the rhythms of nature, the patience required to tend a flock. He probably thought his days of grand destiny were behind him, that he was simply a husband and a father, living a simple life far from the intrigues and suffering of Egypt. But back in Egypt, our people continued to groan under the crushing weight of their slavery. Their cries rose up to God, their anguish reaching the heavens. They suffered immensely, remembering the promises made to their ancestors, wondering if God had forgotten them. Then, one day, as Moses was tending his flock near Mount Horeb, also known as Mount Sinai, a place considered holy, something extraordinary happened. He saw a bush blazing with fire, but not being consumed by the flames. It was a sight that defied logic, a mystery that drew him closer. As he approached, a voice called to him from within the bush, "Moses, Moses." It was the voice of God. "Do not come any closer," the voice commanded. "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." God introduced himself, saying, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." Moses, overwhelmed with fear and awe, hid his face. Then God revealed his purpose. "I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard their crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey." And then the most astonishing part of the revelation, "So now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." Moses, him? A shepherd? A fugitive? A man who had fled in fear? He immediately felt inadequate, unprepared. "Who am I," he stammered, "that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" He felt small, weak, completely unqualified for such a monumental task. He voiced his doubts, his fears, questioning how he could possibly face the mighty Pharaoh, the man who had once sought his life. He also worried about how our people would believe him or what God's name truly was. But God was patient and reassuring. He gave Moses his sacred name, "I am who I am," meaning he is eternally present and all-powerful. He promised to be with Moses, to give him the words to say, and to perform mighty signs and wonders to convince both Pharaoh and the Israelites. He showed Moses signs of his power, turning his staff into a snake and his hand leprous and then healed, proving that he truly was sending him. God's plan was finally set in motion after decades of silence. Moses, the reluctant shepherd, was being called back to the land of his birth to confront the very system that had manipulated and enslaved his people, to demand their freedom from the cruel hand of Pharaoh. With God's powerful words echoing in his heart, and with his brother Aaron by his side as a spokesperson, Moses set off from Midian, heading back towards the land of Egypt. It had been 40 years since he had fled in fear, a prince turned fugitive. Now he returned, a humble shepherd, but with a divine mission: to challenge the mighty Pharaoh and demand the freedom of his enslaved people. First, Moses and Aaron gathered the elders of Israel. They explained everything: God's appearance to Moses at the burning bush, his promise to deliver them, and the signs God had given Moses to prove his word. As Aaron spoke, his voice clear and strong, and Moses performed the miraculous signs before their eyes, the staff turning into a snake, his hand becoming diseased and then healthy. The elders listened with a mixture of awe, hope, and trepidation. When they heard that God had looked upon their suffering and heard their groans, they bowed down and worshipped. After decades of relentless oppression, a flicker of hope had finally been rekindled in the hearts of our people. With the support of the elders, Moses and Aaron then made their way to Pharaoh's grand palace. Imagine the scene. Moses, once a prince of Egypt, now standing humbly before the throne of his former adopted family, facing the very man who had sought his life. With quiet dignity and immense courage, they stood before the most powerful ruler of the known world and delivered God's simple, direct message. "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel," Aaron declared, his voice firm. "Let my people go, so that they may hold a festival to me in the desert." Pharaoh listened, his face probably unreadable at first, perhaps a flicker of recognition for Moses, then quickly replaced by disdain. He was not used to being challenged, especially not by slaves or their supposed God. His response was immediate and arrogant. "Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice and let Israel go?" he sneered. "I do not know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go." He saw this not as a divine command, but as an insolent request from rebellious slaves. He probably thought Moses and Aaron were troublemakers trying to stir up unrest among the laborers. He was a god in his own eyes, and he would not be dictated to by any other, certainly not by the unseen God of an enslaved people. He accused them of making the people neglect their work, of putting idle thoughts into their heads. Pharaoh's reaction was not just a refusal, it was an act of cruel counter-manipulation designed to further crush the spirit of our people and punish them for even daring to dream of freedom. He immediately issued a new, even harsher decree to his taskmasters and foremen. The very next day, "You are no longer to supply the people with straw for making bricks," Pharaoh commanded. "Let them go and gather their own straw, but you must not reduce their quota of bricks. They must produce the same number of bricks as before. They are idle. That is why they are crying out, 'Let us go and offer sacrifices to our God.' Make the work harder for them so that they will have to work and will pay no attention to lies. This was a devastating blow. To make bricks, straw was essential for binding the clay. Now, not only did our people have to make the same number of bricks, but they also had to spend precious time searching for and gathering the straw themselves, all while still being held to the same impossible production target. The already unbearable workload suddenly became truly inhumane. The Israelite foremen, who were themselves Israelites placed over the other workers, bore the brunt of this new cruelty. When they couldn't meet the impossible quotas, they were beaten by Pharaoh's taskmasters. They suffered not only the physical pain, but also the immense pressure of their own people suffering and the hopelessness of their situation. The burden of this increased oppression fell heaviest on their shoulders. Despair spread like wildfire through the Israelite camps. The brief flicker of hope that Moses and Aaron had brought was quickly extinguished by Pharaoh's iron fist. The people, their bodies aching, their spirits broken, turned on Moses and Aaron. "May the Lord look on you and judge you," they cried out bitterly. "You have made us obnoxious to Pharaoh and his officials and have put a sword in their hand to kill us." They felt that Moses and Aaron had only made things worse, drawing Pharaoh's greater anger upon them. Moses, himself disheartened by the immediate failure and the intensified suffering of his people, turned back to God in anguish. "Why, Lord, why have you brought trouble upon this people?" he pleaded. "Is this why you sent me? Ever since I went to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has brought trouble upon this people, and you have not rescued your people at all." Even the messenger of God felt the crushing weight of Pharaoh's cruelty and the apparent failure of his mission. But God, in his infinite wisdom and patience, reassured Moses. He promised that Pharaoh's hardened heart and his persistent refusal would ultimately serve a greater purpose, allowing God to display his mighty power. He reaffirmed his commitment to deliver his people with a mighty hand and great acts of judgment. This first clash with Pharaoh had only shown the depth of the king's cruelty and stubbornness, setting the stage for the epic struggle that was about to unfold, a struggle that would shake the very foundations of Egypt. Pharaoh's cruel manipulation would be met by divine power. After Moses and Aaron's first difficult meeting with Pharaoh, things did not get better for our people. In fact, they got worse. Pharaoh, instead of listening to God's command, decided to make our work even harder. He believed that if he kept us busy and tired, we would forget about freedom and stop asking to leave. This was a classic move of a cruel leader, trying to break the spirit of the people he oppressed. But God had a plan, and he had promised Moses that he would show Pharaoh his mighty power. Moses and Aaron, with heavy hearts but unwavering faith, returned to confront Pharaoh once more. This time, God would not just send words, he would send signs and wonders. Imagine the scene: Moses and Aaron standing before the most powerful man in Egypt, surrounded by his advisors and guards. Aaron held his staff, a simple wooden rod, but in God's hands, it was a tool of immense power. At God's command, Aaron threw his staff down, and right before Pharaoh's eyes, it transformed into a slithering snake, a cobra perhaps, the very symbol of Egyptian royalty and protection. This was a direct challenge to Pharaoh's authority, a sign that God's power was greater than any earthly king's. Pharaoh, however, was not easily impressed. He was used to magic and displays of power from his own court. He called for his wise men and sorcerers. These men, using their secret arts and tricks, also managed to turn their staffs into snakes. For a moment, it must have seemed like a tie, a battle of magicians. But then something extraordinary happened. Aaron's snake swallowed all of Pharaoh's snakes. It was a clear sign that God's power was real and superior, not just a trick. Yet Pharaoh's heart remained hard. He refused to let our people go. So God moved to the next step. If Pharaoh would not listen, he would see. Moses and Aaron were instructed to go to the Nile River, the lifeblood of Egypt. The Nile was sacred to the Egyptians. They worshipped it as a god. Turning it into something disgusting and harmful would be a direct attack on their beliefs and their very way of life. Moses, holding his staff high, struck the water of the Nile, and then a truly shocking transformation began. The clear, flowing water started to change color, turning into blood. Not just a little bit, but the entire river, as far as the eye could see, became a thick, red, gory substance. The fish in the river began to die, their bodies floating to the surface, filling the air with a terrible stench. The water was undrinkable. Every pot, every jar of water in Egyptian homes, even in the palace, turned to blood. The Egyptians, who relied on the Nile for everything, were horrified. Can you imagine the terror? Their most sacred river, their source of life, was now a source of death and disgust. They couldn't drink from it, they couldn't wash in it. They had to dig frantically in the ground near the river, desperately searching for any clean water they could find to survive. Even Pharaoh's magicians, with their tricks, managed to turn a small amount of water into blood, which only made things worse for the Egyptians, as it meant even less clean water was available. For 7 long days, Egypt suffered under the plague of blood. But Pharaoh, in his stubbornness and pride, still refused to listen. His heart was hardened against God's command. So God moved to the next step. If Pharaoh would not listen, he would see. Moses and Aaron were instructed to go to the Nile River, the lifeblood of Egypt. The Nile was sacred to the Egyptians. They worshipped it as a god. Turning it into something disgusting and harmful would be a direct attack on their beliefs and their very way of life. Moses, holding his staff high, struck the water of the Nile. And then a truly shocking transformation began. The clear, flowing water started to change color, turning into blood. Not just a little bit, but the entire river, as far as the eye could see, became a thick, red, gory substance. The fish in the river began to die, their bodies floating to the surface, filling the air with a terrible stench. The water was undrinkable. Every pot, every jar of water in Egyptian homes, even in the palace, turned to blood. The Egyptians, who relied on the Nile for everything, were horrified. Can you imagine the terror? Their most sacred river, their source of life, was now a source of death and disgust. They couldn't drink from it, they couldn't wash in it. They had to dig frantically in the ground near the river, desperately searching for any clean water they could find to survive. Even Pharaoh's magicians, with their tricks, managed to turn a small amount of water into blood, which only made things worse for the Egyptians, as it meant even less clean water was available. For 7 long days, Egypt suffered under the plague of blood. But Pharaoh, in his stubbornness and pride, still refused to listen. His heart was hardened against God's command. Since Pharaoh refused to humble himself, God brought another plague. This time it was frogs. Moses warned Pharaoh again, "Let my people go, or I will bring frogs upon your entire land." Pharaoh scoffed, ignoring the warning. And so Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and an uncountable number of frogs emerged. They didn't just stay by the river, they came up and covered the land. Imagine finding frogs everywhere, in your house, in your bed, in your ovens, in your kneading bowls where you prepared bread. They were in the palace, in the homes of Pharaoh's servants, literally everywhere. The noise must have been deafening, a chorus of croaking day and night. You couldn't walk without stepping on them. They were slimy, jumping, and utterly disgusting. Again, Pharaoh's magicians, with their limited power, were able to bring up some frogs too. But what good was that? It only added to the problem. They couldn't get rid of the frogs, they could only make more. This plague, though not as deadly, was incredibly annoying and made life unbearable. It was a constant slimy reminder of God's power and Pharaoh's defiance. Finally, Pharaoh could not take it anymore. The frogs were everywhere, making sleep impossible, eating impossible, life impossible. He called for Moses and Aaron, not out of true repentance, but out of desperation. "Plead with your God," he begged, "to take away the frogs from me and my people, and I will let the people go to offer sacrifices to the Lord." Moses, always wanting to show God's glory, said to Pharaoh, "You may have the honor of telling me when you want the frogs to leave. Then you will know that there is no one like the Lord our God." Pharaoh, probably just wanting relief, said, "Tomorrow." So Moses prayed to God, and the frogs began to die. They died in the houses, in the courtyards, in the fields. The land was filled with dead frogs, piled up in heaps, creating a new terrible stench. The Egyptians had to gather them all up, and the smell was unbearable. What a mess! As soon as the relief came, as soon as the land was clear of the living frogs and the immediate stench began to fade, Pharaoh's true colors showed. His heart, which had softened only out of discomfort, hardened once more. He saw that there was a respite, a moment of peace, and he went back on his word. He refused to let our people go. He had promised, but he lied. This pattern, this cruel manipulation, this endless cycle of suffering and broken promises would define the struggle to come. God's power was clear, but Pharaoh's stubbornness was equally strong. Pharaoh's refusal to honor his word after the plague of frogs showed Moses and Aaron, and indeed all of our people, the depth of his stubbornness. He was not just a powerful king, he was a manipulator, constantly trying to maintain control by any means necessary, even lying directly to God's messengers. But God would not be mocked. He continued his relentless campaign to free our people, bringing yet more severe judgments upon Egypt. The third plague was different. Moses and Aaron didn't even have to give a warning this time. God simply commanded Aaron to strike the dust of the ground with his staff. And just like that, the dust which covered everything in Egypt turned into tiny biting gnats. These were not just annoying insects, they were everywhere, covering people and animals, causing intense itching and discomfort. Imagine dust motes in the air suddenly coming alive, biting and crawling. It was an invisible, inescapable torment. These gnats got into everyone's eyes, ears, and mouths. They made life miserable for all Egyptians. Pharaoh's magicians, who had managed to copy the staff to snake trick and bring more frogs, now tried to do the same with the gnats. They used their secret arts, trying to conjure gnats from the dust, but they failed. They couldn't do it. Their power had limits, and this time they reached them. Frustrated and defeated, the magicians had to admit to Pharaoh, "This is the finger of God." Even they, who practiced dark arts, recognized that this was not human magic, it was divine power. But even this admission from his own trusted advisors was not enough to sway Pharaoh. His heart remained hardened, his cruel grip on our people unbroken. So came the fourth plague, a clear escalation and a pivotal moment where God's protection over our people became explicitly clear. This time, God sent swarms of flies. These were not just houseflies. They were likely horseflies or dogflies, large, painful, biting insects. They filled the houses of Pharaoh, the houses of his servants, and covered the entire land of Egypt, utterly ruining it. Imagine trying to live, eat, or even breathe with endless swarms of painful, biting flies constantly attacking you. It was a suffocating, stinging torment. But here's the crucial part. God made a distinction. He declared that he would separate the land of Goshen, where our people lived, from the rest of Egypt. In Goshen, there would be no flies. This was a direct, unmistakable sign that the God of Israel was specifically targeting the Egyptians and protecting his own people. It was a powerful message to both Pharaoh and to our ancestors. God was truly with us. Seeing this clear difference and suffering greatly under the torment of the flies, Pharaoh finally seemed to crack a little. He called for Moses and Aaron and offered a compromise. "Go," he said, "sacrifice to your God in the land." He meant, you can sacrifice, but don't leave Egypt. Moses explained that this wouldn't work. The sacrifices they needed to make involved animals that were considered sacred by the Egyptians. If they sacrificed these animals right there in Egypt, the Egyptians would be furious and might even stone them. They needed to go a 3-day journey into the wilderness, just as God had commanded. Pharaoh, desperate for relief, then said, "I will let you go to offer sacrifices to the Lord your God in the wilderness. Only do not go very far. Plead for me also." He was trying to control even their departure, but he agreed to let them go. Moses prayed, and the flies disappeared. Not a single fly was left in Egypt. But, just as before, as soon as the pressure was off, Pharaoh hardened his heart once more. He went back on his word and refused to let our people go. His manipulation was clear: promise relief, get relief, then renege. God, in his justice, would not tolerate such deceit. The 5th plague struck the livestock. This was a devastating blow to the Egyptian economy and their daily lives. God warned Pharaoh that if he continued to refuse, his hand would strike all the livestock in the fields: horses, donkeys, camels, cattle, sheep, and goats. A very severe plague would come upon them. And indeed it did. The next morning, a terrible pestilence swept through Egypt. All the livestock belonging to the Egyptians died. Imagine waking up to find your livelihood, your wealth, your transportation, your food source all dead. The fields were filled with dead animals. It was an economic catastrophe. This wasn't just about discomfort anymore. It was about crippling their nation. And once again, God made a clear distinction. While all the Egyptian livestock died, not a single animal belonging to the Israelites living in Goshen was harmed. Pharaoh sent people to check, and sure enough, there was no loss among our people's animals. This stark contrast was undeniable proof of God's power and his specific protection over his chosen people. It should have been enough to convince anyone. But Pharaoh, blinded by pride and his determination to keep our people enslaved, remained unyielding. Despite the mounting evidence, despite the suffering of his own people, despite the clear distinction between Egyptians and Israelites, his heart was hardened. He still refused to let our people go. He was choosing the ruin of his own nation over the freedom of ours, stubbornly clinging to his cruel manipulation, unaware of the even greater judgment that was fast approaching. Pharaoh's stubbornness was truly astonishing. He had seen his sacred river turn to blood, endured swarms of disgusting frogs, suffered from invisible biting gnats, been overwhelmed by destructive flies, and witnessed the complete annihilation of his nation's livestock. Each time, God had shown his mighty power, and each time, Pharaoh had hardened his heart, going back on his word as soon as the pressure was off. But God was not finished. He was revealing the true cost of Pharaoh's cruel manipulation. The 6th plague brought direct physical suffering to the Egyptians themselves. God commanded Moses and Aaron to take handfuls of soot from a furnace, ash from burning embers, perhaps representing the harsh labor of our people in the kilns. Moses was to throw this soot into the air in the sight of Pharaoh. And when he did, the fine ash spread over all the land of Egypt. As this dust settled, it caused painful boils to erupt on the skin of both people and animals throughout Egypt. These weren't just simple pimples. These were festering, painful sores that broke out on the skin, causing immense agony. Imagine having your entire body covered in these terrible boils, making it impossible to sit, lie down, or even touch anything with extreme pain. It was a truly awful affliction. Even Pharaoh's magicians, who had previously tried to copy some of the plagues, were afflicted. They couldn't even stand before Moses because of the boils, which were on them as well as on all the other Egyptians. This was a powerful moment. The very people who claimed to have special powers and counsel Pharaoh were now incapacitated, suffering the same torment as everyone else, and utterly helpless. Their own bodies were betraying them, proving once again that their magic was nothing compared to God's power. Yet, even with his own advisors suffering, Pharaoh's heart remained hard. The Bible tells us that this time God himself hardened Pharaoh's heart, demonstrating that Pharaoh had passed a point of no return with his relentless defiance. With Pharaoh still refusing to let our people go, God prepared to unleash an even more terrifying plague, one that would devastate the land and directly threaten human life. This was the plague of hail, unlike anything Egypt had ever seen. Moses was instructed to warn Pharaoh, telling him to gather his livestock and servants who were still in the fields, because a devastating hailstorm was coming. Anyone or any animal left outside would be struck down and die. This was an act of mercy embedded within a judgment, giving Pharaoh and his people a chance to save lives if they chose to believe God's word. Some of Pharaoh's officials, those who truly feared the word of the Lord after all the previous plagues, quickly brought their servants and livestock indoors. They listened. But others, those who did not take God's warning seriously, left their people and animals out in the open, perhaps still thinking it was all a bluff, or simply not caring. This plague, therefore, also served to distinguish among the Egyptians themselves, those who recognized God's power and those who remained stubbornly in denial. Then Moses stretched out his staff toward the sky, and God sent thunder and hail. But this was not just any storm. It was a torrential downpour of giant hailstones mixed with fire that flashed among the hailstones. Imagine large chunks of ice, the size of rocks, plummeting from the sky, accompanied by terrifying lightning bolts and thunder that shook the very ground. It was a truly apocalyptic scene. The hail came down over all the land of Egypt, from one end to the other. It struck down everything that was in the field, both people and animals, if they hadn't taken shelter. It shattered every tree in the fields and flattened all the growing crops. The flax and the barley were destroyed, though the wheat and spelt, which ripened later, were not yet fully grown and might have survived in some areas. This was an unprecedented destruction of property, agriculture, and life. Never before in Egypt had there been such a dreadful storm. But, just as before, God protected his people. In the land of Goshen, where the Israelites lived, there was no hail. This contrast was stark and undeniable. The roaring thunder, the flashing fire, the destructive hail, all stopped at the borders of Goshen. Our people watched, safe in their homes, as God's judgment fell heavily upon their oppressors, once again seeing the clear hand of God separating them from the Egyptians. Pharaoh, utterly terrified by the sheer power and devastation of this plague, finally seemed to break. He sent for Moses and Aaron, admitting, "I have sinned this time. The Lord is righteous, and I and my people are wicked. Plead with the Lord, for there has been enough of God's thunder and hail. I will let you go, and you shall stay no longer." He sounded genuinely repentant, confessing his sin and promising to let our people go. Moses, always quick to obey God, told Pharaoh he would pray for the storm to stop so that Pharaoh would know that the earth belongs to the Lord. Moses then went out from Pharaoh, stretched out his hands toward the Lord, and the thunder, the hail, and the rain all stopped. The terrifying storm was gone. But, predictably, as soon as Pharaoh saw that the rain and the hail and the thunder had ceased, his heart hardened yet again. He sinned once more, and he refused to let our people go. His repentance was fleeting, based only on fear of immediate danger, not on a true change of heart. He was still consumed by his desire to control and manipulate, unaware that each act of defiance brought his nation closer to utter ruin and brought God's ultimate judgment closer to him. Pharaoh's refusal to release our people, even after the terrifying and destructive hail, pushed Egypt to the very brink. His heart was so hardened that he continued to go back on his word, proving his promises were nothing but cruel manipulation. But God, in his relentless pursuit of justice for our enslaved ancestors, was about to unleash 2 more plagues that would bring Egypt to its knees, plunging it into deeper despair. God commanded Moses to go to Pharaoh again. This time, the warning was about locusts. Moses told Pharaoh that if he continued to refuse, God would bring such an immense swarm of locusts into Egypt that they would cover the face of the land, making it impossible to see the ground. These locusts would devour every single green thing that was left after the hail, every tree, every plant. They would fill his houses and the houses of all his officials and the houses of all Egyptians, something that neither Pharaoh nor his ancestors had ever seen before. After Moses delivered this grim warning, he turned and left Pharaoh. By now, even Pharaoh's own servants and officials had had enough. They were suffering immensely, their nation was being destroyed, and their lives were in constant danger. They pleaded with Pharaoh, saying, "How long will this man be a snare to us? Let the men go, that they may serve the Lord their God. Do you not understand yet that Egypt is ruined?" They were desperate, seeing the total collapse of their society if Pharaoh didn't relent. So, Pharaoh called Moses and Aaron back. He tried another compromise, another form of manipulation. "Go, serve the Lord your God," he said, "but who are the ones that are going?" Pharaoh was trying to limit the exodus, hoping to keep the women and children behind as leverage, or to ensure that only the working men would leave temporarily. But Moses was firm. "We will go with our young and our old, with our sons and our daughters, with our flocks and our herds, for we must hold a feast to the Lord." Pharaoh, predictably, became furious. He yelled, "May the Lord be with you if I ever let you and your little ones go. Clearly you mean mischief. No, only the men among you may go and serve the Lord, for that is what you were asking." He then drove Moses and Aaron out of his presence. His offer was a trap, a way to keep control, but Moses saw through it. And so the plague of locusts came. Moses stretched out his staff over Egypt, and God sent an east wind that blew all that day and night. When morning came, the east wind had brought such a massive swarm of locusts that they covered the entire land of Egypt. The Bible says that there had never been so many locusts before, nor would there ever be again. It was an unimaginable sight, a living carpet of insects that blotted out the sun. These locusts devoured everything green that the hail had spared. They ate every plant, every fruit on every tree, leaving nothing green in the entire land. This was the final blow to Egypt's agriculture, guaranteeing famine and widespread suffering. Again, Pharaoh quickly called for Moses and Aaron. He was terrified. "I have sinned against the Lord your God and against you," he confessed. "Now please forgive my sin only this once, and plead with the Lord your God to take away this death from me." Moses prayed, and God sent a very strong west wind that swept the locusts away and drove them into the Red Sea, so that not a single locust was left in all the territory of Egypt. The land was clear. But just as always, as soon as the immediate threat was gone, Pharaoh's heart hardened once more. He did not let our people go. His promises were hollow, his repentance fake, born only out of fear. His manipulation continued, dragging his people deeper into devastation. The 9th plague was an eerie, suffocating darkness. God told Moses to stretch out his hand toward the sky, and a darkness that could be felt descended over the land of Egypt. This was not just a cloudy day or even a normal night. This was a thick, oppressive darkness that lasted for 3 full days. People could not see each other, and no one moved from his place for 3 days. Imagine being trapped in your home, unable to see anything, completely disoriented, with a palpable sense of fear and helplessness. It was a terrifying experience, stripping away the sense of sight, a vital human connection to the world. For the Egyptians, who worshipped the sun god Ra as one of their most important deities, this darkness was a direct attack on their god, a clear demonstration of God's supreme power over all their idols. It was a sign that their gods were powerless against the God of Israel. Yet, astonishingly, there was light in all the dwellings of the Israelites. In Goshen, our ancestors had normal daylight. This was another powerful and unmistakable sign, further distinguishing God's people from the suffering Egyptians. The line between those God protected and those he judged was becoming sharper and clearer with each plague. This prolonged, oppressive darkness finally caused Pharaoh to call for Moses again. He offered another compromise. "Go, serve the Lord. Only let your flocks and your herds remain behind. Let your little ones also go with you." He was still trying to keep some of our wealth, some leverage over us. But Moses stood firm. "Not a hoof shall be left behind," he declared. "For we must take some of them to serve the Lord our God, and we do not know with what we must serve the Lord until we arrive there." Moses made it clear that everything, down to the last animal, was part of God's plan and needed to go. Pharaoh's patience finally snapped. His heart was hardened by God, and he erupted in anger. "Get away from me," he shouted. "Beware, do not see my face again, for in the day you see my face, you shall die." Moses calmly replied, "As you say, I will not see your face again." This was a dramatic and final confrontation, setting the stage for the ultimate and most devastating plague that God was about to unleash, a plague that would break Pharaoh's will and finally force him to release our people. The confrontation between Moses and Pharaoh had reached its breaking point. After 9 devastating plagues, Pharaoh's heart remained as hard as stone. His cruel manipulation, his broken promises, and his stubborn pride had brought Egypt to its knees, but he still refused to let our people go. With his final angry threat, Pharaoh had declared that Moses should never see his face again. But God was not done. He had one last terrible plague in store, a judgment so profound that it would finally break Pharaoh's will and force him to release our people forever. Before delivering this final ultimate warning to Pharaoh, God spoke directly to Moses, preparing him and our people for what was to come. He told Moses that he would bring one more plague upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. After this, Pharaoh would not just let our people go, he would utterly drive them out. This was a crucial promise, not merely permission, but a desperate expulsion. God instructed Moses to tell the people to ask their Egyptian neighbors for articles of silver and gold and clothing. This was not stealing, it was a form of compensation for centuries of unpaid harsh labor. God had made our people find favor in the eyes of the Egyptians, so when the time came, the Egyptians would willingly give them these treasures. This was a symbolic transfer of wealth, showing that our people would not leave as impoverished slaves, but with dignity and resources. Then Moses, still in Pharaoh's court for that last intense meeting, delivered God's final, most dreadful message. He declared, "Thus says the Lord, about midnight I will go out into the midst of Egypt, and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on his throne, even to the firstborn of the female servant who is behind the handmill, and all the firstborn of the animals. There shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as has never been before, nor ever shall be again. But against none of the children of Israel shall a dog bark or a tongue move, against man or beast, that you may know that the Lord does make a distinction between the Egyptians and Israel." Imagine the chilling impact of those words. The death of the firstborn, the first child, the heir, the pride of the family, was the most devastating loss imaginable in ancient cultures. And not just human firstborns, but animal firstborns too. This plague would strike at the very heart of every Egyptian family, from the highest noble to the lowest servant. It would be a judgment that affected everyone, leaving no household untouched by grief except for our people. Moses also told Pharaoh, "Then all these your servants shall come down to me and bow down to me, saying, 'Get out, you and all the people who follow you. And after that I will go out.'" Moses was stating with clear authority that the very people who now serve Pharaoh would soon be begging our people to leave. And with that, Moses, full of righteous anger, left Pharaoh's presence for the last time, just as he had promised. Now, God turned his attention to our people, giving them specific instructions for their protection during this terrible final plague, and for how they were to commemorate their coming freedom. This was the institution of the Passover, a sacred feast that would be remembered for all generations. God told Moses and Aaron that the month they were currently in, the month of Abib, would now be the first month of their year, marking a new beginning, the start of their life as a free nation. On the 10th day of this month, each family was to select a lamb, a 1-year-old male without blemish or defect. If a family was too small to eat an entire lamb, they were to share with a neighbor. The lamb was to be kept until the 14th day of the month. On that evening at twilight, the entire community of Israel was to slaughter the lamb. Then a crucial step. They were to take some of the lamb's blood and put it on the 2 doorposts and on the lintel, the horizontal beam above the door, of the houses where they would eat the lamb. That same night, they were to eat the lamb roasted over a fire, along with unleavened bread, bread made without yeast because there would be no time for it to rise, and bitter herbs, which symbolized the bitterness of their enslavement. They were to eat it in haste, dressed for a journey, with their sandals on their feet and staffs in their hands, ready to leave at any moment. God explained the purpose of the blood. "The blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be on you to destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt." This act of applying the blood was an act of faith and obedience, a visible mark for God's protective angel to see. Those houses marked with blood would be spared from the angel of death. This night was to be a memorial, a reminder of God's mighty act of salvation. Every year, for all generations, our people would celebrate this Passover. They would eat unleavened bread for 7 days, remembering their hurried departure. The bitter herbs would remind them of their suffering. And the lamb, sacrificed and eaten, would forever symbolize the price of their freedom and God's protection. These instructions were precise, filled with deep meaning. They were not just rituals. They were preparing our people, not only for their immediate survival, but for their identity as a nation, chosen and redeemed by God. They were taught that their freedom would come at a great cost to their oppressors, but through God's grace and their obedience, they would be spared. The stage was now set for the final, most terrifying act of God's judgment, the act that would shatter Pharaoh's cruel manipulation once and for all, and open the door to freedom. The night of the final plague was a night of immense tension and fear for the Egyptians, and a night of solemn anticipation for our people. Every Israelite family was inside their homes, having eaten the Passover lamb, with the blood smeared on their doorposts, their bags packed and their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and hope. They waited, just as God had commanded, ready for the moment of their long-awaited freedom. As the clock moved past midnight, a terrible and agonizing cry began to spread across Egypt. It started in the palace and quickly echoed through every town and village. A wail of sorrow, unlike any sound ever heard before, filled the night sky. The 10th plague, the death of the firstborn, had struck. In every Egyptian home, from the grand palace of Pharaoh to the humble dwelling of the lowest servant, the firstborn son died. The firstborn of Pharaoh, the heir to the throne, was struck down. The firstborn of his officials, the firstborn of the common people, even the firstborn of the prisoners in the dungeon, all perished. Even the firstborn of the livestock, those that had survived previous plagues, died. There was not a single Egyptian house where someone was not dead. The sheer scale of this tragedy was unimaginable. A nation in utter devastation, every family experiencing the loss of their most cherished son, their future. The land was plunged into a state of unimaginable grief and terror. This was the ultimate price of Pharaoh's stubbornness, his cruel heart, and his relentless manipulation of our people. He had refused to let God's firstborn, Israel, go, and now his own firstborn and all of Egypt's firstborn were taken. Pharaoh, who had so defiantly refused to see Moses again, now acted with panicked desperation. In the middle of that terrifying night, he sent for Moses and Aaron. His tone was no longer one of arrogance or challenge. It was one of abject surrender and despair. "Get up, get out of my people's sight, you and the Israelites. Go, worship the Lord as you have requested. Take your flocks and herds with you as you have said, and go, and also bless me." Think about it. The most powerful ruler in the world, the one who had boasted he did not know the Lord, was now begging Moses and Aaron, the representatives of that very Lord, to leave and even to bless him. The depth of his defeat was absolute. His will was finally broken. He simply wanted our people gone, immediately, without delay, to stop the horrors that God had unleashed upon his land. The Egyptians, too, were pressing our people to leave in a hurry. They feared that if the Israelites stayed any longer, they would all die. They had seen enough. They had endured enough. They just wanted this nightmare to end. Our people, having been prepared by God, were ready. They took their dough, which had no yeast in it, and wrapped their kneading bowls in their cloaks, carrying them on their shoulders. They had no time to let the bread rise. They had to leave now. And just as God had instructed, they had asked their Egyptian neighbors for articles of silver and gold and for clothing. The Egyptians, in their desperation and fear, freely gave them what they asked for. So our people, the former slaves, left Egypt enriched, carrying the wealth of their oppressors, a symbolic compensation for generations of brutal servitude. 600,000 men, besides women and children, began their exodus. The total number of people, including a mixed multitude of non-Israelites who joined them, was likely well over 2 million. It was an enormous procession, a nation being born in a single night. They had lived in Egypt for 430 years, and on that very night they departed. Our people did not leave empty-handed, nor did they leave quietly. They marched out, organized by their tribes, with God leading the way. The dream of freedom, the promise made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, was finally coming true. Pharaoh's cruel manipulation, his desperate attempts to hold on to our people, had ultimately failed. Instead, his stubbornness had only served to demonstrate God's mighty power and unwavering commitment to his covenant. The long journey from slavery to freedom had begun, a journey into the wilderness, toward a promised land.